Boxing Casuals.
Hello guys and welcome to episode 1 of The Boxing Casuals, the one-stop shop for all things boxing. My name is Sam.
And I'm Chris.
And together we are The Boxing Casuals. So just a little bit of background. Obviously this is episode 1. Just wanted to introduce, we've introduced ourselves, but why are we doing these podcasts? Well, I don't know about you, Chris, but myself, I find I'm an avid fan of boxing. I watch a lot of the sports. I know that you've got vast interest in mixed martial arts and stuff like that as well. But for me, I find it's a bit difficult sometimes, especially in the YouTube comments, to get your views across unless you've got a bit of a background in the sport.
It's not just the YouTube comments. I think you'll find going to any form of social media, you'll find backlash when you try to comment or talk about boxing and you haven't got any form of boxing experience within the ring. So yeah,
no, you're labelled a casual. So what we've done, Chris, very cleverly, I will add, is we've turned it on its arse, haven't we?
Well, we're trying to.
Well, that's just a little bit of background about us. And what we're going to do, we're going to try and keep it light and breezy. We'll talk through a few subjects every episode, and we'll see where we get to with it. And as it grows, see where we go. So
yeah, well, we don't want to get into anything too technical because that's not our realm of expertise. But if we see someone throw a hook, we'll call a hook a hook. Let's just say.
I'll call a jab a see you later. Anyway, so we've got a few subjects we wanted to talk through today. I mean, we've done a little bit of prep for this, and as of the time we've done the prep, so much has happened, it's hard for us to keep up with it. So we're just going to try and stick to some. We got like 3 big fights we want to talk about, upcoming fights, predictions, that kind of thing. And then if we got time, we'll throw in a little bit of boxing news and whatnot. So do you want to get started with the upcoming heavyweight bout, Chris, the championship fight?
Yeah. So on the 20th of August, we've got the AJ Vs Alexander Youssef Rematch happening over in Saudi Arabia. The Rage on the Red Sea.
Love that name. Love that name.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? How do you feel about the fight taking place in Saudi Arabia? Don't you think it's one of those fights that should be nearer the fans? Either UK or Ukraine or even a neutral territory like the USA?
Potentially. I think Ukraine's a no-go at the moment for obvious reasons. But
of course,
I get what you're saying. I think Saudi, they won the Ruiz Jr. second fight as well. I think ultimately it comes down to money. I would love it to be domestic again, but something I read, and I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where, but because it was Usyk's choice, because he's the defending champ, he got to choose where, and he took it outside of neutral territory so that you don't get the home advantage or whatever. But I think there was a bigger purse. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was $85 million, so £65 million was the split. Thank God I've done my research. That was from TalkSport, and apparently they've negotiated a 50-50 split for it, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I read somewhere that Alex Krasik, Alexander's manager, they wanted to try and make as much money for their guys they could, and who can blame them? It's a short career, so why not? Moving on to our predictions, how do you see this one going compared to the first one? Any difference?
I don't know, and we were just saying this before the recording. Like, I think your boxing brain steps in, and when you look at how Usyk performed last time versus Joshua's game plan was all wrong. He tried to outbox the boxer. We don't need to say that. That's been done to death. Everyone said that. But as you were sort of saying, has AJ had enough time to adjust to a new style of fighting, or I don't know.
I think it kind of feels like, although it's been almost a year, we only recently had the announcement of AJ's new trainer. And it kind of feels like from the announcement, which sort of feels like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and in reality it's probably a month and a half ago now. But it feels like it's come around a bit too quickly from him joining his new trainer. And has he learned enough with Robert Garcia to really push on? Who knows? But I'm sure I'm excited for this one, though.
I think if he taps into old school AJ, like the one we're all thinking about, whether or not that was just cherry picking his opponents or he was actually a bit of a mean machine, I think there is some potential with that, because what I look at with Usyk is he did struggle with Chisora. Whether or not that was, he outpointed him. Don't get me wrong, he absolutely outpointed him in terms of scoring punches, but he couldn't deal with the size of Chisora, and Chisora was really imposing himself and stayed with him for 12 rounds, which I was quite impressed with for someone that old.
Yeah.
That sounds harsh. Someone that weathered. Let's say weathered.
So I remember watching that one in the start. I think I was a bit anxious about it. I did kind of want. I wanted to see a good fight. I didn't really have any vested interest in either fighter, but I remember seeing that one, thinking, "God, one of those big wild swings from Chisora lands flush in the chin. How is Usyk going to fare? And this is only a second fight at heavyweight." Obviously, we saw how that ended up in the end, but.
As you know, I'm an avid Usyk fanboy. We'll go into that later. But I was watching that. I was getting a bit nervy. I don't know, because I felt like you said. I felt any time it was banana skin a bit. He was in control of the fight, but equally, when he got leaned on, when he got pushed around, he was getting pushed around. I don't know if that is just his style of fighting, being on the counter and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I feel like AJ, you've got to give AJ more than a puncher's chance in these fights. I think. This fight coming up.
The issue that AJ has compared to Chisora is he's not. He's a bigger man, but he's not an imposing man. He doesn't push his opponents around in the ring. He's quite clean of his boxing. He's not dirty. He doesn't use those dirty tactics, which he really needs to employ in this fight this time around, I think.
He's got to make it a bit of a dogfight. Don't let Usyk get comfortable. But again, I feel like it's one of them. I'm saying this, but I just feel like that's a very big ask because Usyk's
I agree.
Knowledge of range, his movement, just the angles he can attack from is just. I don't think AJ was prepared and will be prepared for that. How do you get a sparring partner that compares to him?
Yeah, it's difficult. Not at that weight anyway, and you can't really put a light heavy or a cruiser in there with AJ when the weight difference is going to be massive. Unless of course the cruisers in the off season, and it could be 220, 230. But what's AJ? What's AJ in his last fight? 240, 250.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask. I don't know this, but do you think he'll come in heavier for this fight than he was in the last one?
I think if he's going to try Robert Garcia tactics, then he's going to be somewhat more imposing. He's going to try and walk forward. He's going to try and force the pace. The issue we've got with AJ is, can he keep that up? If he doesn't find success in the first half, what's he going to look like in the second half? I think there's a lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, it's a genuinely really exciting fight, and me and you were saying just before we click record, it's been a while since we've got excited for a fight coming up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we were excited for the Fury White fight, but that was sort of a predetermined result. We already knew how that was going to go, and it kind of went exactly how everyone thought it was going to go. It's kind of strange.
Sort of, but no one expected that uppercut. I still have dreams about that uppercut sometimes.
Well, I think Wyatt has nightmares about the uppercut.
People claiming that it was an illegal push and that. I mean, my argument to that's always been, if you're not out on your feet and someone gently pushes you like that and you go down like a falling oak, you're out on your feet if you fall over like that.
Yeah, I've been pushed a few times. I don't remember falling over like that.
No, Dillian White was saying that he deserved and more count and stuff like that, extra time to get up and to recover and stuff to go on, but. I don't know. I think the ref. I stand by the ref on that one. I think that was a decent call.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so I remember the first fight. Actually, you were pretty adamant that Usyk was going to win. I had a feeling Usyk was going to win, although I wanted AJ to win.
We both went. Bit of backstory to that. We both went to the old Tottenham Stadium. Me and Chris and I. Some of us were in considerably better seats than others. We were looking at each other from opposite sides of the stadium. I was like flashing my light at him and stuff. It was good.
Well, my tickets were a gift from a girlfriend, so I can't really say. Oh, well, you bought me rafter seats. I took them with appreciation.
No, you would do.
And I brought my binoculars and I had a great time.
That is one thing I will say to anyone that's not been to live, because I've been to. That is my first and only fight so far that's at professional level. I've seen amateur fights, but the difference. I don't know. How did you find that? Because my view was all right. I could just about see everything without the screens where I was sat.
I needed the screens for sure. I mean, I've been to a few fights at the O2. I've been a couple at York Hall. Obviously, York Hall is considerably smaller than the two I just mentioned, the Tottenham Stadium. So that was fine. But when I was at the O2 again, the seats were not the lowest, not the best, somewhere in the middle, and still needed the screens. So it couldn't be just down to my bad eyes though.
My brother went to the Fury White bout, and he had the cheap seats, as it were, but he said that he couldn't really see much. He kind of sported a little bit for that. But I guess it's more about for that. That ring walk still gives me tingles when I look at his ring walk and stuff. So the atmos for that must have been amazing. But let's just give any sort of factoids we can. I know these are forever changing at the moment, but with regards to the fight, do we know sort of ring walks, that kind of bit? Any info we can give the avid listeners?
Well, I think if I recall, the time difference in Saudi is about an hour.
Something like that. I don't sit the Ruiz fight. I don't remember waking up at stupid time for or anything. I remember sitting up at normal time watching it and go to bed.
Yeah, it's 2 hours. They're 2 hours ahead, so it's not going to be anything ridiculous. Yeah, if anything, it's going to be quite early. To be honest with you, about 7. I want to say 8 p.m. Probably. We'll see them ring.
So the cards will probably start at about 5 p.m.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. What do you make of the undercard? We've got some big names in there. Callum Smith returning in a title eliminator. We've got Filip Hrgovic against Zhilei Zhang. That's a fight
I saw a tweet. I saw a tweet out from Callum Smith, and he was going on about the last time he was in Saudi, he won his. That
was the Muhammad Ali Trophy, the Super 6 tournament that the German twins, I forget their names are, Kalle and Nisa Sauerland put on. He fought George Groves in the final of that and knocked him out with a pretty clean body shot. It's a sort of I guess a happy hunting ground for Callum Smith.
Yeah, and he's part of I want to call them the dynasty or whatever, but it's the Smith clan. There's loads of them. There's loads of them in that lot, and they're all bloody decent fighters in their own right as well.
Well, the younger two are probably leading the line. Stephen and Paul, they were good fighters, but I don't think on the level of Liam and Callum.
Which is Callum fought Canelo, or is that Liam, or both?
No, they both fought Canelo actually. Liam fought him at super welterweight for his WBO title, and Callum fought him at light heavyweight. And light heavyweight? No, I beg your pardon, super middleweight for Callum's WBC, and I think maybe. Or was it WBA Super? I can't quite remember. But yeah, they both fought him. And to be honest with you, Liam actually put up a better fight, which is surprising because Callum's got the more favourable dimensions. He's 6'3". He's got long arms. He's got the better knockout power. But Liam, although Liam was knocked out in the 6th fight, it wasn't an entertaining fight. Whereas the Callum Smith fight, it was pretty much him getting walked down for 12 rounds, which is quite sad to say. But never mind, we move on. So let's just run through quickly, because we don't want to dwell on one topic for too long. If we go through, and I'll let you sort of take the lead here, if we go through the fights in the undercard, is there any standout names there, people you would recommend to keep an eye on? I think
that kind of thing.
I think this fight here, the Andrew Tabiti Tyrone Spong, that's going to be a good fight. Tyrone Spong was initially Usyk's first heavyweight challenger when he moved up, but obviously he pulled out, failed drugs test. No, we don't advocate for that, but he's still a good fighter. No. He's seen quite a lot of his kickboxing career. Andrew Tabiti was a quality fighter. He had a lot of hype behind him. He was part of the Mayweather gym before he got knocked out, unfortunately, in the Super 6 tournament by Dorticos, the Cuban cruiserweight. I keep an eye out for this one. This is quite going to be an interesting fight, I think. An interesting return for Badu Jack. He's fighting Richard Rivera. Should be another interesting one. I think Richard Rivera is someone who's on the come up. Hasn't fought the greatest competition yet, but one to keep an eye on. An exciting heavyweight clash, I think, between Filip Hrgovic and Zhilei Zhang. I think Zhilei Zhang's the wrong side of 30, or maybe even early 40s, but he's got a lot of power, and so is Filip Hrgovic. So I don't expect that one to go too long. It should be an interesting firefight, I think.
Yeah, and one of the names that's on there is the female, the Ali versus Nova fight. Ali, I don't know how they pronounce it. I don't want to say Ali, especially when you're a boxing podcast.
It is Ramla Ali. Yeah, she's I think she is. Where is she from?
She's
I
British,
can't.
as far as I'm
She's
aware.
British, but she's a Somalian fighter. Yeah. Obviously she lives in Britain, but she got ties to Somalia. So there's a big hoo-ha about her being one of the first Somalian women fighters in the amateur game. And yeah,
I
I think
believe she's on a bit of a fast track to a title as well, as what we were discussing.
well,
Off
that's the
camera
thing.
again.
Yeah, with women boxing, you only one or two. Well, starting off 3 or 4 fights away from a title shot or a title eliminator. The pool of fighters is just so small down there that you're never too far away from a title shot.
At the moment.
So yeah, at the moment, of course, yeah. So it's forever changing, but a couple more fights, and we'll probably see her in a world title fight.
And so we did find the exact number, but I believe off the top of my head it was the pay-per-view to the UK. It's exclusively sold to Sky Box Office, and I believe at a price of £26.95, so about £27 all in for the pay-per-view. I did read something, again, if I'm wrong there, I'm probably only about £1 off, so I apologise if that's wrong. I did read something interesting about Usyk asking some of the Saudi people involved in running, I think it may have been even the Prince, I'm not sure, with regards to if he can broadcast this free in Ukraine on YouTube. So apparently that is a thing for Ukrainian people.
Oh, get the VPN out.
That's what
We do not advocate for streaming.
No, but if you did want one, here's a good link. No, I'm joking.
NordVPN, please sponsor us.
Shout out to Nord, big up. Yeah, that's a nice little touch, and I think that's part of the reason everyone buys into Usyk. Well, I do certainly. He's just a likable chap. It's like Fury in a way. It's the people's champ. You relate to him as a person, and then he's also amazing at what he does in the ring as well.
Yeah, he seems like a nice guy, a funny guy. He's always entertaining. I think it would be great if you could speak a bit more English. Now, I probably won't come across too well, but it's a global sport, isn't it? And,
but I think he speaks a lot. I think this is all an act, because there's no doubt he understands exactly what's going on. He uses interpreter just for the hell of it. There's no doubt in my mind. I've seen him in interviews. He has a lot more English than he gives off.
Yeah,
and fair play to him. It's all on his terms, isn't it? So before we move on to the next one, how do you see that happening if it does happen? I mean, obviously, literally as of today, as of the 8th of August, we've just had videos of Fury apparently kicking his retirement and calling out Chisora for the trilogy fight. The fight we all wanted to see, Chris.
That's the fight. That's the big one. the third rematch.
The third rematch. When there's a potential unification fight to the winner of this Usyk Joshua, all we really want, Chris, is Chisora Fury. That's what we want.
The word on the street is the winner gets wilder. so that'll be an interesting one.
Just an endless loop of nonsense. But look, I saw it was a BT. There was a BT documentary of Big John on a bus, and he goes around all day with Steve Bunce. He goes around and Chisora gets on the bus, and they did say that apparently they've always promised Chisora that Fury would retire on a fight with Chisora. So maybe this is just him honouring that to his mates. They seem pretty pally, to be honest.
Yeah, they're friends. Well, they're friends. They've been friends for a while. So this is just a cash out for Chisora. I think if he doesn't get the Wilder fight, which is very unlikely,
I don't think that's a good fight for him. I genuinely think he could get himself hurt in that fight.
Yeah, it depends. It depends. If we see Wilder back in a comeback fight, how he looks, we'll see. But yeah, for Chisora, I think this would be a cash out money grab. He heard him to Eddie Hearn at the end of the Pula fight. He said he's referencing about it's time to get paid now. It's time to get paid to the big boys.
He wants caviar. Yeah,
that's
caviar,
exactly.
not fish and chips.
So
always a wordsmith. When he's not throwing tables, he's just so eloquent with his words. It's the metaphors just go on for days with this guy.
He's very profound indeed.
So let's skip that fight then. If it does happen, let's say, or even if that fight does happen and Fury comes out of retirement and says, right, I'm going to unify. If he goes up against either of them, let's say, based on our predictions, what is your prediction? Are you saying Usyk for this fight?
I think it would be, silly to say AJ otherwise, based on what we saw in the last fight. So I'm going to go Usyk, pretty much.
I am gonna say Usyk because of my boxing brain. But as I said to you earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if AJ pulled something out of the bag. I've just got this niggle, and I don't know what it is, and there's no sense. But yeah, all right. So let's say it's Usyk Fury for the unification, and it goes every way that's meant to, and we finally get this big fight. How do you call that one at this point in time?
Well, if it's Usyk, I can't see Fury fighting him. Yeah, I can't see
At
it.
all? You think he
No.
ducks him?
Well, first of all, I don't think Usyk's got $500 million to send Fury. And second of all,
But Chisora does apparently. That's interesting.
well, there you go. There you go.
Half a billy.
That's fish and chips for you. But yeah, no, I can't see the fight happening if it's Usyk who's the winner, because it's that fight. Though it's a big fight, it's not
risky for him.
It's a risky fight, and it's not a big. You're not going to sell that as much as AJ Fury would sell in the UK. AJ Fury would be one of the biggest fights the UK's ever put on.
What's interesting is that the last unified champ was British, and that was Lennox.
That's right.
The irony is, even if someone British does unify it, if they don't defend it, they're going to be at the same level as Lennox, because Lennox never defended his unified belts. So we need a champ who will get it and then defend the unified belts.
Well, at this point, I mean, the amount of times that
I just don't want the belts to unify and then just fucking back to square one, literally, as soon as it's happened.
That is the likely scenario, I think. I believe. Yeah,
so frustrated. What is going on with this sport? Oh,
yeah. I mean, but it's fair play if either Fury or AJ does win that big fight. You know, they've not only have they made a lot of money in their career, they've become undisputed. What is the point in carrying on? You know, they only tarnish their legacy were they to carry on fighting. I think because they'll be fighting, they'd have to fight the young up and coming guys. The sort of the old generation are fading away now. They can't keep going up against the Pulevs, the Povetkins, you know. Right, we should move on to the next fight we're going to discuss. So we've got the Canelo Ggg fight coming up to us in September.
For a bit of background, Chris, you may want to fill some people in. I'm familiar. I've watched a couple of the fights, but I know you've much more what's the word? Educated on this matter. So if you want to just whistle stop tour for the people listening.
What, on the first two rematches, the first two matches. So yeah, I remember I watched the first fight actually when I was when we were in Hungary. That was when the first fight was on. The weekend right. we were in Hungary. Yeah. Oh no, beg your pardon. It was Prague when we were in Prague.
We were in Prague, yeah.
Yeah. So the first fight, yeah, what a banger that was. Back and forth action. Spoiled by a outrageous scorecards from Adelaide Bird, 118, 110 to Canelo. No one saw that fight. They could only giving Golovkin 2 rounds. Yeah, for me personally, I had Golovkin winning that first fight, maybe edging it by a round or two. Just the work rate, I think, won him that fight. But yeah, like I say, it was spoiled by that scorecard. Don't get me wrong, it was an entertaining fight, and Canelo was in it, but he gassed in the middle rounds, and I think those are the rounds where Golovkin built up a strong lead, in my opinion. But I think a couple of years after that, we saw the rematch, Golovkin Canelo 2, and that was a bit more decisive. That was still a close fight, and there were still some people out there thinking that Golovkin may have nicked it, but for me, I thought Canelo did a lot better job. He didn't back up as much as he did the first fight. He was there. The fight, he hurt Golovkin a lot to the body, which seems to be a weak spot for Golovkin now.
Well, I think as people age, and in general, your body will fade. You'll gas more. It's used as a tool to gas people out.
That's right. Still got an iron chin. Still got a block of mithril where his head should be. But yeah, no, he's the third fight should be entertaining. Now, I'm not sure how long Golovkin will last in it. We saw him out last time against Rota Murata in Japan a few months ago. Good fight. Golovkin won by KO, but early on that fight was hurt multiple times to the body. Murata's a big puncher. Yeah, he's a big puncher, but not the greatest boxer in the division. How do you feel this one's going to go?
for me, it's only, and this is no disrespect to Golovkin, it's only Canelo for me. And I'm surely going on ages and gases and tanks and whatever you want to use, but I just think Canelo's got a bit more left to give at this point. I think Golovkin, as you said, is just starting to feel it. His opponent last time wasn't hugely great as well, but when you're going in against one of the pound for pound best, the only spanner I could put in the works is the fact that Canelo is coming off a loss. I don't think it necessarily will dent his confidence too much, but that could come into play. He didn't just get. I mean, fair play to it for him for stepping up. There's no, it's a win-win fight for him losing to Bivol, really, because he's not lost anything other. He probably has gained respect for going into unknown territory for him and stuff. But he was shown up a little bit in that fight.
Well, this is one of those fights where we had a lot of interjection from the boxing casuals. A lot of people
that's
who
us.
didn't. It is us.
Hey!
A lot of people who didn't really know of Dimitri Bivol or what he brought to the table, or that he was even a weight heavier, or his ability. They just saw him as a nobody, and I knew he was more than capable of putting on that kind of performance. Canelo didn't help himself by just loading up mostly on all the big shots.
And he tried to fight the Rangers completely wrong. I think Bivol just executed his game plan to perfection.
That's
just
right.
Kept him out of range, didn't get sucked in, just kept jabbing him. I don't know. I feel like to the more casual fan, that would have been a relatively boring fight to watch because there wasn't huge amount of action. And when it did happen, it was bursts of action. And then it was just back to Bivol controlling the range. I don't know. That's the only reason I'm saying this is just because I feel like that could have some sort of an impact on Canelo, but I don't think it will. I really don't.
No, I don't see Golovkin employing the same tactics that Bivol did in that last fight, mainly because of the feet. Golovkin hasn't got that the feet to keep himself at that range, and we haven't seen that in his career. I mean, when he fought David Lemieux, he boxed well early, pretty much stops Lemieux with a jab, but. Yeah, do you think Canelo employs the same tactics against Bivol? Just the loading up in the big shots?
I think so. I think that's all he knows. Unfortunately. Tell me another fight he's done something different.
Well, he used to be more of a boxer back in the day. He used to use, he still got the upper body movement and he still got the good defensive awareness. But he never really saw many jabs against Bivol in that fight, and so that's something that Canelo used to do. It's sort of been coached out of him, and it's with his. I
feel like it's that Mexican kind of style he's doing, where you walk people down and you keep coming forward, and it's ferocious, and it's very, very, very appealing to watch for the fans. But I feel like it's quite a high risk strategy, and was definitely not the right one for Bivol. But
no, definitely not.
He's got my money for this fight. Have we got any info on this fight that we can give the peoples? So the one bit I found out since then, I've just seen it on our screen, is that when we initially did our research, DAZN had promised this to UK customers on our subscription of £8 that we would be getting this for free. Well, included, I should say. But now it is actually a pay-per-view on top of a subscription.
Yeah, it's another one of those DAZN pay-per-views. The DAZN pay-per-view's dead pay-per-view. But, it is what it is. I suppose if they want to keep Saul at this point, you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg. That's what it is. Showtime were able to put them on pay-per-view and they made a buckload of money, and then they made DAZN compete at this time, I suppose.
This is a big super-duper unification diddly-do, isn't it? This is everything.
This is actually super middle. Canelo's already the undisputed champion at that weight. So, yeah, this is for all the marbles at 168. Now, this is, I think, I'm going to put myself out there and say this is the first time that Canelo's fought at super middle. Yeah. So, it should be interesting. That's for sure.
I feel like for me, I won't lie, I'm probably not going to stay up for it. This is a watch in the morning job for me. I think you'll stay up.
Definitely. I'll be up. Yeah. No, also, because I think it's got quite an interesting undercard. It's got Jesse Rodriguez, who we've recently seen knock out one of my favourite fighters, Sorong Visai, and recently took out Carlos Cuadras in an exciting fashion. He's fighting Israel Gonzalez, which should be an interesting fight. Israel Gonzalez is a fairly good, decent level contender. We got Ali Akhmedov against Gabe Rosado. And I think we saw Akhmedov knocked out by Carlos Gongora on the undercard of, I think, Billy Joe and Canelo.
Who is also coming back into boxing, apparently. Billy Joe, just again, maybe that's not necessarily a casual story, but yeah, Billy Joe Saunders, after lots of photoshopping of his face and podging up, is apparently on his way back to the ring after losing to Canelo, breaking his orbital bone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, the irony of that whole situation was just too much. him tweeting about Daniel Dubois about you should never quit because of his orbital bone, and then literally breaking his orbital bone.
Karma does come around quickly, doesn't it?
God, unfortunately. I remember watching that, just thinking, no.
I remember watching that fight. I remember watching that fight, thinking Billy's doing pretty well here. He's doing better than I thought, and he just saw the fight fade out of him in round 6.
It went very similar to how Amir Khan versus Canelo did. Like, you thought, oh, he's controlling him well, but no. What ultimately was happening was Canelo was feeding out the range.
Canelo was walking him down, putting the pressure on, gassing him out, keeping him moving, and Billy just couldn't keep up. But
he's a controversial subject, is Billy. But also on this undercard for the Triple G Canelo is Austin Williams, I seem to remember.
Yeah, Austin Williams, who's facing Great Britain's Kieran Conway. This should be an interesting fight. Kieran Conway is one of those old school throwback fighters who's pretty much fought every domestic super middle, with the exception of Anthony Fowler. He gave James Metcalf a great fight. Yes, he was in a great fight with Ted Cheeseman. And those are two guys who are always coming forward, throwing shots. You've seen Ted Cheeseman in all sorts of wars. The guy's fought like 26. Can't expect to see him in the fight game for too much longer. But he's a good level, perhaps a good level European fighter. Austin Williams, another matchroom prospect. We saw him last time out against Rydell Booker, I want to say. Yeah, sorry, we saw Austin Williams out against Chordell Booker, not Rydell Booker. The Gift. I've been following the Chordell Booker's career actually, and when I saw that fight announced, I thought this could be a good test for Alamo Williams here because these are both two undefeated guys. But Chordell just wasn't there that fight. It was taken out in the first round. It was kind of disappointing, to be honest with you. But this should be an interesting one, so I'll keep an eye out on that fight.
The overall prediction from you is Canelo win, then, isn't it? It's what you're.
It's a Canelo win. I think he could stop Golovkin, stop him to the body if he goes there early and often.
So by point, so no points. You don't think points coming into this? Is this a knockout fight?
I think it could be a stoppage to the body. Yeah, that's what I see. Obviously not to the head because you're going to need much more than a punch to stop Golovkin to the head, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, just to flip that on its arse, then, how does Golovkin win if he beats Canelo? How do you do it?
Well, what we saw with Canelo in his last fight with Bivol was that he can gas out. In the second half of the fight, he was a much faded fighter. His defensive awareness was still there, but he just had nothing for him in that second half of the fight.
I think it was just range, though. He just got outranged completely.
He got outranged, that's for sure. Golovkin won't be able to do that, but if Canelo's loading up from the start and not hurting Golovkin in the first half of that fight, then I can see Golovkin. Because one thing I haven't seen from Golovkin is his gas tank fading. He'll be there in the 12th round. So if Canelo's not there, stamina wise, then I can see Golovkin putting it on him, using the volume and perhaps squeaking away with a point decision, but I just can't get away from a stoppage to the body. What about you? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Canelo knockout 8, I'd say. Probably not to the body though, but 8. What's the date for everyone? We've mentioned everything but the actual date of the fight.
So this is on Saturday, the 17th of September. It's another one of those DAZN pay-per-views, so it should be fairly easy to get to. In terms of finding it for viewing.
Okay, let's go back to something I'm a bit more comfortable with. Let's talk domestic level upcoming fights, shall we? I mean, we've already mentioned, you've got the Fury, Chisora, you've got the Parker versus Joyce. There's been a number of them coming up, but the one I'm most interested in at the moment, I think it's tickling everyone's balls a little bit of the fans, the domestic levels. Is this Connor Benn Eubank 2 situation? Eubank Jr. Sorry.
Yeah.
Situation to put into the casual fans' perspective of why this fight is such a big deal. What's the interest in the fight? Why is it, Chris? I could say it, but I fancy letting you speak for a bit. Why is this tickling everyone's plums?
Well, I mean, this fight's pretty much sold by the dads, isn't it? Really, those of the older boxing heads remember the one of the greatest boxing rivalries between Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. All throughout the 90s. Two thrilling fights, mind you.
In the first fight, it was a TKO, but Nigel Benn was certainly, because he was the whole Dark Destroyer persona. He's a very intimidating kind of guy, whereas that was it. The parallel between the two was just interesting, I think. One was Chris Eubanks, who's very eccentric and
it's one of the more interesting characters of the sport, and I find him entertaining as hell. To be honest with you, I can watch anything he does. It really does make me laugh sometimes.
During the 5-channel era, as they call it, where we didn't have all these extra things, that was this was a really big deal. This rivalry, this domestic rivalry, was all you'd hear about. They had a genuine disdain for each other, would be the word, I think. And even throughout the years after the fights, I think they have made up now. They've got their sons, and they're, for various reasons, I think they've all sort of changed. But I remember you mentioning that they were on TV just as warriors having a scrap as well.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. We're talking when they both retired. It was I can't remember what the TV show was called, mind you, but it was basically a load of contestants doing various warrior challenges and those sorts of things. Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. were part of the makeup of the cast of on that show, and they got to a stage where they just completed the challenge, and emotions were high. Chris Eubank turns around to Nigel and says, "Let's have a spar. Let's have a spar. For old time's sake, let's have a spar." and obviously things got quite feisty then, as you would imagine.
Yeah, definitely look it up on YouTube, people. It's well worth a watch.
It's funny.
It boils over so quickly. It escalates just out of nowhere. But
it does. I don't think when you've got an old rival, you can never really get over it, can you? It's always at the back of your mind.
I seem to think now that they've got their sons, this is what I mean, vicariously through them, but they seem to have genuinely quelled the beef. Nigel Benn's found religion, and he's really happy, and good on him for that. Chris Eubank seems pretty weirdly peaceful dude, considering what he was like in the ring. He seems to be the parallel opposite outside of the ring. Whether or not that is just a persona, I don't know. But let's get into the fight. So obviously that's a bit of the background, but their sons are both good boxers in their own right. There is no denying that. So Connor Benn, I think of the two, has had a bit more of a cherry-picked career, because he signed very early with Matchroom, and he's had Eddie Hearn on his management team, getting the right kind of fights and the right exposure. I think Chris Eubanks has done it a bit more of the dirty way. He's had some real scraps. He's fought BJ. He beat BJ Saunders, didn't he?
No,
he lost to BJ. Sorry, he did. He lost to him. Yeah. Chris Eubanks come up a lot because there was the whole thing when he was up and coming where he was training himself, wasn't he? Or he was his own trainer. I don't know. It's a cherry. He hasn't had a cherry-picked fight. If you know what I'm trying to say, the comparison between the two is one's the golden boy, the DAZN golden boy now, being promoted as that, and I think step aside AJ. I think Connor Benn's going to be the next one in the limelight. Then you've got Chris Eubanks, who a bit more rough and ready. He's a bit more a maverick, to be honest with you. The way that they came up in the sport. I would never really think he was signed to anybody. He sort of worked with promoters to work on certain fights, but he did fight a lot of the sort of mid-level to upper-level domestic fighters on his way up. Something that Connor Benn has sort of skipped over. He has fought, the likes of George Groves. He has fought the likes of Billy Joe Saunders, and he has fought
when he was undefeated at Andy Yildirim, who was at the time being billed as a come forward, machine monster with a big punch. Chris Eubank Jr. took him out there in 3 rounds and looked pretty fantastic doing it. He has fought Matvey Korobov, a good fighter who unfortunately that ended via shoulder injury. But Matvey Korobov is a very good southpaw boxer who we did predict to give Eubank a lot of trouble. He did beat James DeGale, given it was the back end of James DeGale's career. But, these are all fighters he has fought. Connor Benn, you can't really say the same yet. Mind you, he is still young. Connor Benn, what is he, 25, 26?
Yeah, he's young. He's got. Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's hard to gauge him at the minute, just because he hasn't been in those high-level domestic dust-ups.
He's not, and even when he gets in those, I know we've spoken about this before, but what happens with Connor Benn is he does look like he's got some good fundamentals when he keeps a lid on it. When you see him box, he's got a clear understanding of keeping away from your opponent, staying at range, choosing his moment and going in for the kill. But what he's got a tendency to do, and he's been working on it, 100% you can see the improvement, but he just loses his head still. Even in his last bout, I can't remember who it was against, the bloke, he kind of bowled him over a little bit. It was
Chris Van Heerden.
It was more momentum, and just he had some moments where he looked really sharp. And don't get me wrong, this isn't even a slating of him. It's just there is still much improvement, and I think Eubanks is a bit more polished at this stage.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean Eubank's got 7 years on him, so you would expect it. I mean, there was a point where Eubank was just as reckless as what Connor is now. When he felt like he had his opponent hurt, then the swinging came out. The over swinging, should I say? That's one thing he's got to sort of calm down on, because some fighters when they're hurt can be more dangerous.
Yeah,
and Connor Benn, I think
Andy Ruiz Jr. to prove that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if this fight was to happen, it'd be an interesting one. For me, the advantages that Chris Eubank Jr. has, and the fact that he's now this move back jabber we saw in his last fight with Liam Williams.
Yeah, it was the Roy Jones influence, wasn't it? And he put Liam Williams down with jabs in that fight, which I've not really seen before. But when you watch them back, they're blisteringly fast, those jabs.
Roy Jones from Wish, that's what he is.
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, Liam, it was disappointing to see him go down from those jabs. I kind of had Liam as the tough man, a hard man. He took some big shots from Andre in his last fight, and then to see him get put down with some jabs given that they were timed perfectly,
Do you think it was a really good night for Chris? Because he sort of switched off after he'd comfortably won the fight. He could have gone in and killed him. I cast the wrong word, I apologise. He could have gone in and gone for the kill, was what I was meant to say. He could have finished up. But I think he just he went, I've got the victory, I'm just going to play with him a bit now.
Liam's mother might be listening to this,
Yeah, sorry, Liam's mother. I didn't mean it.
No, but
I misspoke. Don't find me.
But Chris. I think he comfortably won the fight, in my opinion, but it was close. It wasn't close in the first half, and he let it slip away in the second half. For me, I think Liam Williams won a lot of those second half rounds just because Chris wasn't doing enough. Obviously, he got the 3 knockdowns, so he built up a comfortable lead, but he let himself get outworked, in my opinion, in the second half of the fight.
I think he came out in the gas.
He just stood off the gas. But if you want to put on a show, you can't be doing that. Surely you've got to step on the gas.
He was just dancing around him. I think he was just trying to annoy him, and that beef hasn't been squashed. So I'm wondering if that could be some sort of potential. I don't think it would be good for Liam Williams to go into that fight again because he got bullied a little bit. But
I think the Box have just signed Liam Smith. So if this Connor Benn fight doesn't go off the line, then we could see Liam Smith in that. But that
would be a much better matchup for everyone involved.
Yeah. How would you see the Connor Benn Eubank Jr. fight going if that was to happen?
My gut again. A lot of this is my heart versus my gut. My gut, which is rather boxing large. Obviously, I've got a 6-pack. I don't know. My gut tells me that Eubanks has the experience on Ben. And he has those quick hands, as I was saying, and he's that kind of elusive fighter. So if Connor goes in for a strike and mistimes it, he's going to get popped on the way in. and then Eubank's going to be gone. So
Yeah.
I don't doubt that Connor Benn has the potential to be able to give him a lot of trouble, but I'm worried that this could be too much too soon for Connor Benn at this point.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
I'll go
think I
with
tend to
Eubanks
agree with
based
you.
on that.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, we've seen Connor Benn against a Adrian Granados, who's not typically a move back jabber. He's not typically a defensive fighter, but that's what the tactics he employed when he fought Connor in their fight, and you could see the frustration build up when Connor fought that fight. He couldn't land anything clean. By the end of it, he was fuming. He was saying, "Oh, why would you come to the fight to not fight?" And so for someone like Chris Eubank Jr., who's now employed that style in a couple of his last fights, I think he could potentially do that comfortably all night, just popping him with a jab and keeping him at bay, because Connor's given up a lot of physical advantages to Chris at
So
this
do
point.
we know what the catch weight is? And for the casual fans out there, it's been agreed of catch weight. I've very kindly I've sourced us a little definition to read out from Wikipedia, Chris, haven't I?
Always reliable.
Yeah, I learned that
Don't
one
listen
from
to your teachers.
Yeah, yeah. Ignore your teachers when they say don't reference Wikipedia unless it's about catch weights. Do you wanna read out the definition, Chris?
Well, so the internet definition is a catch weight is a term used in combat sports, such as boxing or mixed martial arts, to describe a weight limit that does not adhere to the traditional limits for weight classes.
So, in layman's terms, if two people aren't in the same weight division, they will agree a weight between them that's, I guess,
In the
agreeable
middle.
for
In the
both
middle.
people.
Yeah,
Well, I
somewhere
don't
in the
think
middle.
this is though. I don't think this is in the
No, it's
middle,
not
is it?
quite. Yeah, no, it's not quite. I mean, if Chris Eubank Jr. is a 160-pound fighter and Connor Benn's a 147-pounder, a small 147-pounder at that, he'd probably be more suited to fighting at super lightweight, in my opinion.
So,
But
and I believe it's 156 or 158. I haven't got the actual confirmed yet, but it's somewhere around that.
yeah.
This doesn't favour Connor Benn, does it? Nothing about this favours
It doesn't. It doesn't. But we haven't seen Chris Eubank fight that low. I don't think.
Well,
He's
if
always
he's at
been 160
160, he's only
pounds.
going to lose £4, whereas Connor Benn's got to gain almost a stone at almost £10.
But have you seen Connor? Have you seen Chris Eubank Jr. at 160 pounds when he's made their scales? He's skin and bone, pretty much skin and bone and a six pack. So it'd be interesting to see.
If Connor Benn does win it, if he could win it, do you think it would have to be? It wouldn't get a points win, would it? It couldn't be. I don't think that's his style. I haven't seen him adopt that style.
Well, he comfortably outpointed Sebastian Formella, someone who had bigger dimensions than him. But I just don't think Formella is a great boxer, to be honest with you. So yeah, it would have to be. I mean, to be able to outpoint Eubank, you'd have to outwork him on the inside or outjab him on the outside, and I don't think he could do either of those.
No, you'd have to get him up on the ropes or in the corners. But again, as you say, that's easier said than done with a slippery little dude.
And even if he could get him on the ropes from the corners, he's dealing with a bigger man. Can he bully a bigger man into the corners? Probably not. Probably not.
We've been reading things about the purse bid being up to $7 million. Apparently, it's going to be on DAZN pay-per-view, which is brilliant. So again, us DAZN members don't get much for our membership in terms of these domestic level fights, but I guess it's that with the names like that, they're going to cash in on that fight, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a cash grab for sure. But
is it too soon for Connor Benn? Could it derail his momentum? I think Eubanks Jr.'s got nothing to lose here.
No, well, Connor needs a big fight. Connor needs a pick'em fight, and this potentially could be it. Potentially.
Who else would he have? Because I think he's a brilliant prospect, and that's what I mean. I'm speaking negatively because I want him to do well, and I don't want him to get in these fights that could derail him. For me, he's not fighting at his weight, so it doesn't matter unless he's going to go up and stay at that weight. This seems like a bit of a cash grab.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of the aftermath of this fight, were he to lose, I don't think he'd be in any trouble of losing his position or losing any clout, because he's taking a high risk fight, fighting at a weight much higher than what he's used to, fighting a bigger man. So yeah, I can't see him losing any clout from this. For Chris Eubank Jr., if he was to lose this, then yeah, he's got a lot of things to answer for. He's fighting a smaller guy. He's made the catch weight scenario. So Yeah.
I just think Eubanks will be the favourite, but for some reason not everyone, but the general consensus is a lot of people don't necessarily like. He hasn't done himself many favours over throughout the years. Let's say it like that. He's been a bit of a difficult character.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I quite liked him on Gogglebox though with his dad. I found that quite wholesome.
Oh yeah, no, I did like that as well. That was very wholesome. Good TV that was.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I think that's everything. That we had. We've got 3 main subjects. Obviously, to you guys listening, all the 3 listeners we'll probably get for this episode. If you've got any thoughts or suggestions, feel free to comment. Because this is episode 1, we'd love to get a bit of feedback, and I guess any topics you'd like us to sort of go over, that'd be good, just so we can get the ball rolling. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, Chris.
That's okay. Thanks for having me on, and we'll look forward to the next one.
And I'm glad that your baby didn't wake up, because we were worried about that, weren't we? It was touch and go.
Well, she has been rolling around, but luckily, no, she's not awake. So,
well, we would have heard her. No, sure, at some point we'll get featuring.
Yeah, she's a little bit young to understand boxing, but
you'll get her on. We'll get her a punch bag at some point. All right. Well, thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you for the next one, Chris. Goodbye, everybody.
Alrighty.
The Boxing Casuals.